good morning and for good evening and pretty much good everything in between for anybody, depending where you are around the world. I'm thrilled that you join us for this inaugural launch of an event for the FDAAA Alumni Association, our Foreign Office Alumni Network. This is, we want to welcome those who are already FDAAA Alumni Association members and also those who are not yet. So we wanted to make sure everybody felt welcome. My name is Nancy Bradish-Myers. I chair the FDAAA Alumni International Network. It's one of a number of the Alumni Association committees. And we were as most of you know, the Alumni Association is a voluntary membership organization that represents both FDAAA alumni, people who are not working at the agency anymore, and people who are still within the agency as membership, as members. And one of the things that we do is we try to connect people together. We also have an educational mission, and we also we intentionally try to serve those who have served from the FDA. So before I hand this over to Mark to moderate our extremely wonderful panel today, I just wanted to let you know a little background on this. And just before we get there, just the chat is open for people. We've got 35 people from outside on. So if you guys want to chat on that, any Q&As for the panel will be in the Q&A button. So please use that. But just to give you a little reason and a little background on how this idea started, visualize the skyline of Shanghai. Peggy Hamburg had just wrapped up her commissionership and had traveled to China to meet with many in the kind of the startup community in China. It was May 2015. And as FDAAA alumni board chair, I was invited to give a presentation at DIA China. And as I walked off the dais, there was Lee Verbois motioning me to come over and talk to me about an idea she had. And this idea is something she wanted to create a virtual place for the Foreign Office community to congregate and support each other. And we thought that the FDAAA Alumni Association would be a perfect host for that kind of effort. And so, Lee joined the International Network in 2019, and now finally 6.5 years later, we're having this inaugural event. So I am just so happy that, for Lee's leadership and vision, but also the fact that everything takes a little while and we're finally here. So I just wanted to mention who can join. Anyone can join this Foreign Office Alumni Network who's worked in an international office. We actually changed our bylaws to make sure that people that were paid through the State Department, they could join. We also, what is the network? It's going to be a like-minded group of people to communicate and build a community. When can you join? You can join immediately. I'll drop some of that information in the chat. Where it's going to be a virtual community because the foreign offices are a little far away from each other, but we'll also do things in person. And then why is because this is such a unique community that it really does need the support, especially if you're going abroad to work in an office or something like that. So we'll continue to share details as we go forward. But let me do this. Let me turn it over to Mark Abdu. Mark is as you all know, he's the Associate Commissioner for Global Policy and Strategy at FDA. He's going to moderate, and he's served at FDA for the last 5.5 years. But prior to that, he's had some very distinctive positions with USAID, the National Security Council at the White House, and also at HHS. So let me just turn this over to Mark. And Mark, if you want to run our panel, that'd be great. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. And thank you, Nancy, for the great work the FDAAA Alumni Association has undertaken to make today possible. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Mel Plaisir, Walter Batts, and the entire International Committee for their efforts. Welcome to FDAAA alumni members, including those who recently joined to take advantage of the Foreign Office Alumni Network. And welcome to everybody from FDA who has dialed into today's unique gathering. We're excited to welcome all of you to this virtual space. Some 13 years ago, FDA confronted a series of public health tragedies stemming from unsafe FDA-regulated imports, including vegetable protein contaminated with melamine that sickened and killed American pets, contaminated heparin, and diverted and counterfeit glucose monitor test strips. Most of these products came from China. These events came at a time when FDA was rethinking how best to protect and promote public health in an increasing percentage of FDA-regulated products were imported goods that had come to the United States through complex supply chains. One of the ways that FDA responded to these public health tragedies was to establish foreign offices in strategic locations around the globe as part of FDA's Beyond Our Border initiative. In November 2008, FDA established the first foreign office in Beijing, and since then, FDA's international presence has grown currently includes foreign offices in New Delhi, Brussels, which includes a liaison to the European Medicines Agency posted to Amsterdam, and 3 offices in Latin America, Mexico City, San Jose, Costa Rica, and Santiago, Chile. A goal of establishing a local presence was improving FDA's ability to gather information. Today, our foreign offices are FDA's eyes and ears in the country or region where they are located. They closely follow manufacturing, regulatory, and market developments, accumulating vital expertise over time. Our foreign offices meet with industry and government and educate them about FDA's regulatory requirements and build relationships that simply can't be built from afar. And our China, India, and Latin America offices also conduct in-country inspections, which has proven vital during the pandemic. As the head of the Office of Global Policy and Strategy, or OGPS, which oversees our foreign posts, I've had an opportunity to visit several of them. And I can tell you it takes a talented, committed, and highly trained staff to work in our offices abroad. Since FDA opened the first office in Beijing, some 110 FDA direct hire staff and over 40 locally employed staff, or LES, have served in at least one of our foreign posts, and some have served in more than one. Living and working abroad for the FDA and serving as a US diplomat is a special opportunity, both for you and your family. It comes with extraordinary tangible and intangible benefits, such as having the opportunity to truly experience another culture, to meet and get to know your foreign counterparts, and to develop new contacts and friendships. Moreover, when you work at a foreign office, you experience firsthand the agency's global impact while seeing how you contribute to FDA's critical public health mission. At the same time, living and working abroad for FDA also comes with challenges and even hardships, such as living outside of the United States and being so far away from family and friends. When staff finally leave overseas positions, we've heard they do so with mixed emotions. On the one hand, staff likely look forward to coming home and taking on new challenges, but at the same time, it means they must say goodbye to a special experience and to the many new friends and colleagues they met at Post. Current and former FDA Foreign Office staff, including our locally employed staff, represent a unique community within FDA. When someone shares an intense common experience, as they have, there's the natural tendency to want to reach out and reflect on that experience with others who've shared it. I, for one, am grateful that the FDA Alumni Association is launching this new network for FDA Foreign Office alumni that will allow both current and former FDA Foreign Office staff to stay in touch and build camaraderie. Since the US government limits how long you can serve in a foreign office, staff in my office at FDA's headquarters are constantly engaged in recruiting and engagement efforts. I'm encouraged to hear that one of the plans for the new Foreign Alumni Network is to serve as mentors for new Foreign Office staff or for those who are considering working in one of our offices. The decision to serve abroad is of great value to the FDA and the American public. For those who previously served in a foreign office or who currently serve in one, I thank you for your service. I believe your work is an integral part of the agency's effort to protect the public health. In closing, I also want to thank the FDAAA for creating this new network, and especially to thank Li Verbois, a former China office director and former director of OGPS's Office of Global Operations, for seeing this project through. Today, we're going to hear from a panel of current and former FDA Foreign Office staffers who will talk about their experience. They are Sarah McMullen, the director of FDA's India office, Sandy Queter, the Deputy Director of the Europe Office and our liaison to the EMA in Amsterdam. Mike Rogers, Assistant Commissioner for Human and Animal Food in the Office of Regulatory Affairs, was Director of FDA's Latin America office from October 2011 to July 2015. And Irene Chan, Deputy Director of Pharma, and from 2009 to 2013, she served as Assistant and Deputy Director of the FDA China office as part of the original cadre of FDA officials posted overseas. And she returned to the China office in 2017 for a 2-year tour as Deputy Director. I'm going to kick things off by asking a series of questions. That will give time for others to pose questions in the Q&A box, as Nancy said. I ask our panelists to keep their answers relatively brief so we're able to get multiple perspectives on certain issues and have time for questions from the audience. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. Thank you for joining us from New Delhi. And my question to you is, why did you decide to pursue an opportunity in FDA's India office?
Well, first off, I want to thank the FDA Alumni Association for putting this great event together tonight, and to all my other fellow panelists. It's great to see so many familiar faces and have enjoyed working together over the years. And I think that's one of the best things about the foreign offices, before I answer the question, is the people that you meet and the long-term and lifelong friendships that you make in these positions. So that being said, I really was interested in the work of the foreign offices when I started doing foreign inspections. I'm a chemist by training, and I was a chemist in the Southeast Regional Laboratory for many years in Atlanta, Georgia. And I participated in foreign inspections globally as a chemist. And I think I got interested because I really saw the impact of the work that was being done globally. And I started to look for opportunities. And sometimes you just kind of have to wait for those life moments to be right for you and your family to make the decision to move overseas. And so once the kids were old enough, I started looking for opportunities, and some opportunities came available in India, and I made a connection with the then office director, Letitia Robinson, another amazing FDA alumni who is now serving with USAID in South Africa. So she really encouraged me along the way, and that was really how I got my interest and my start in deciding to come to the Foreign Office.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Michael, I'm going to ask you the same question. Why did you decide to pursue an opportunity in FDA's Latin America office?
Well, thanks for that. And first, I also want to stress that it's a pleasure to be sharing this virtual stage and participating on a panel with my colleagues and international pioneers that have had such a significant impact on FDA's mission and role overseas. I also want to thank OGPS and Lee for her leadership for creating this forum that allows us to share our stories. Really, I think I was predisposed for that position as a child after my father moved our family to Kaduna, Nigeria, having taken a position with the United Nations. But in my professional career as an investigator who conducted both domestic and international inspections, as well as in management, I always wanted to have an opportunity to have a bigger impact for the agency and for public health. And so when the opportunity presented itself, our family made a decision, and in hindsight, it was the right one.
Thanks very much, Michael. Sandy, I want to turn to you now. Thanks for joining us from Amsterdam. Sometimes working in foreign office can be complex because of the geopolitics going with working in that office. And I know that you transitioned to Amsterdam after Brexit. So could you tell us what the driving factors that played a role in your decision to continue in your role after the transition from London to Amsterdam, and what that was like because of the change in location of EMA?
Thanks for that. It's a really interesting question, Mark. And hello to fellow panelists. Thank you, Lee and Nancy and the Alumni Association for this. It was when I first took on the position at EMA in London, never in a million years did I think that I would find myself in Amsterdam. I mean, it just, the Brexit vote happened just about 4 months after I arrived. And I decided to make the transition because I had been watching, I was really interested. I mean, this is partly selfish on my part. Partly it was because I wanted to watch this be there and see how this organization I was embedded in was able to respond to the challenges of such a massive change. We go through changes in our own organizations all the time and find ourselves in the thick of it. And I wanted to see how an organization similar to ours made that kind of transition. At the same time, I knew because it was extraordinarily traumatic for them, beyond description, traumatic on multiple levels. And at the same time, I also stayed because I knew I know how difficult it is, having just gone through it, to come into a new site by yourself without an office FDA office surrounding me. And the idea of having someone else come in and try and pick up in the midst of this change in the host just seemed like a burden beyond description. So I decided, well, I'm going to give this a go for both those reasons. And turns out to have been an incredible experience, just an incredible experience.
Thank you, Sandy. Irene, thanks for joining us from Taiwan. You served in multiple capacities for FDA over multiple tours. Can you tell us why you first decided to pursue an opportunity in FDA's China office, which was brand new, and what drew you back to it?
Thanks so much, Mark. And I also want to extend my thanks to you and Lee and the FDA Alumni Association for putting together this wonderful network, especially for Lee. I know it's been a labor of love, and I'm really looking forward to it as a really great resource. So it's kind of funny for me, initially, the impetus for going overseas for my first tour was primarily personal. I had actually not, intended to live overseas. When I started my career, there were no overseas offices when I joined FDA back in 2002. So it actually turned out that when I met my now husband, he had grown up overseas and he really kind of wanted that life for us. And coincidentally, at that time, FDA, due to the public health incidents that Mark described, had decided to establish foreign offices, and the stars just aligned. And I thought it would just be such a thrilling opportunity to be part of this this new initiative. It really seemed like something where FDA could make a huge difference. And to be part of something new and exciting was very enticing. So the stars aligned and I got the position, and it was fantastic. It really was just amazing to be in the environment, to see the level of impact that FDA has. It definitely broadened my perspectives on so many levels, from a policy perspective, just understanding how FDA's policies do impact, foreign firms, foreign companies, garner a lot of attention from our counterparts. Also from just, from kind of an interagency perspective, Mission China is one of the largest in the world. There's 50 agencies there, and being able to walk down the hallway and interact with, USDA, FAA's colleagues to talk about an issue is just something that's pretty unique. It doesn't really happen inside the Beltway. So there's definitely a sense of camaraderie that develops through the mission. And also, kind of fascinatingly, from an FDA internal perspective, working alongside investigators. I had come originally from Office of Chief Counsel and Office of Policy, and in some of my roles I had reviewed investigation reports, but I hadn't ever been out in the field before. And then working alongside people who were investigators and being able to join them myself on occasion was truly eye-opening, and just gave me a broader insight on how the FDA functions and all its different components. So that was really great too. So, due to personal considerations, we had very, very young children at the time. We went back to the US to after the tours ended, and but still, I think just the the level of engagement and excitement that happens overseas, very enticing. On a personal level too, there's a lot of support that's provided by the embassy community and the expat community. I don't think that was really evident to me before I went on a tour and experienced it myself, that it is a really great place, I think, to have milestones, young children, older children, or wherever you are in life. There's people in that stage that offer support. And so we thought, for those reasons as well, it would be wonderful to have another go at it. So we went back out in 2017, and it was great.
Thanks, Irene. Sarah, back over to you. I know from my time abroad that living abroad changes your perspective on things. And can you tell us what the greatest surprise or growth opportunity that you or your family experienced during your service overseas, and how that might have changed your perspective?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think one of the things that they don't tell you about the foreign offices is that it's a growth accelerator. I feel like you cram in probably 10 years worth of personal and professional growth into a 2-year tour, and it just seems like a growth accelerator. I think my perspective on leadership and management has changed. My perspective on engaging with others has changed. I think one of the big things that, and one of the things that we face in working back with FDA domestically, is that we always think that other governments should be doing it the way that we do it. And so when I first came to post, I was like, well, why aren't they doing it this way? And why isn't this happening? And I think that engaging with our government counterparts, I think we come to realize how lucky we are as an agency, and the resources we have and the regulations we have that allow us to do the work that we do. And so really, I think one of the perspective changes has been figuring out how to, leverage the FDA resources, how to walk alongside our counterparts, how to help them identify and utilize the resources they have, because in a lot of cases it's different or less than what we have. So I think in terms of viewing others and always thinking that somebody should be doing something the way FDA does it has definitely changed since I've been here at Post.
Thanks, Sarah. Sandy and Mike, now I'm going to turn to both of you. We know that each Foreign Office alumnus has the opportunity to give back. And what are 1 or 2 ways you think you or others could contribute to the Foreign Office Alumni Network to strengthen engagement, mentorship, and knowledge sharing? And Sandy, why don't we kick off with you, and then we'll turn to Michael.
I think one of, in many respects, it's the way I see it is by being available to answer questions, to provide perspectives, a lot along the lines of what Sarah has already mentioned. Because I think that for me, one of the best experiences of having been in this position and lived overseas is being able to see, look at our agency and look at our country through an outside lens. Being part in and part out, but really seeing how much we have, and really provide some reflection on how what we do is really powerful, how rich we are in resources in our own agency, what is possible, but also really help people think about, efficiencies. I am amazed being part of an organization that has many of the same responsibilities that we do, but carries them out with a fraction of the resources that we do. And for the most part, everything's fine. So what can we learn from that, and have good conversations about what we do, how we can do things efficiently and effectively to continue to expand our reach in ways that maybe we hadn't thought about before. And I think those kinds of conversations through the Alumni Association can enrich discourse about regulatory oversight and smart public health.
Thanks, Sandy. Michael?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I think that forums like this allow all of us to share our individual stories, but they're probably very similar. And it does give a perspective to people who are considering an opportunity to work in one of our foreign offices. You know, if you think about it, all of us in our previous positions, when we took another position, from our family's perspective, it was the same. We left at the same time. We came home at the same time. It was no different, even though we had a different title. In this position, it's a family decision. And I can tell you that living and working overseas was an incredible experience. And I share that with many in ORA and in our centers who are considering an opportunity to work overseas. Personally, I can tell you that it was an invaluable experience for our entire family. You know, my kids who were 12, 10, and 11 at the time, they've come back with a whole different perspective of the world and other cultures. Professionally, I think really all of our experiences give us what I'll call professional instincts that allow us to take different perspectives and apply it to our everyday decision making. And the ability, and my colleagues have said this, the ability to see other international regulatory approaches. And a lot of those have some applicability in the United States and assist in some of the unique situations that we're encountering. And I'll end by saying that, quite frankly, I have never been more proud of our agency until I had the opportunity to see it through the lens of our international colleagues. We are revered as the FDA. They see us as one FDA, not the centers in ORA and Office of Commissioner. You speak for the FDA. You're expected to know pretty much everything about the FDA. You are the authority for the FDA. And that's an incredible responsibility, but it's very rewarding.
Thanks, Michael. Irene, I'm coming back to you now. You know, we're here to also learn about ways we can deepen FDAAA's engagement in the future. Do you have any specific recommendations for how the Foreign Office Alumni Network can support you and other alumni?
Yeah, definitely. Well, in my case, you know, I've decided to stay overseas and taken on a new role outside the agency in the private sector. And as have a number of my colleagues, you know, from the foreign offices. And I think, you know, for those of us who decide to stay overseas, it's all the more important to have a network and resources to be able to draw upon. Like I said, you know, when we were at the embassy, there was a built-in support network. And I think those of us who've moved on to other foreign positions can utilize each other as a support network, and both professionally and personally. And I think, you know, this has been voiced by a number of my colleagues. When you're living overseas, the two kind of blend together, like all the considerations matter. So how you're able to live your life, how you're able to raise a family are integrally tied to how you can operate successfully professionally in a foreign environment. So I'd love to contribute to that based on my experiences. And I'm really looking forward to have a network to also be able to tap into for that kind of support.
Thanks, Irene. So I've already asked Sarah how her perspective shifted during her time abroad. But now I'd like to ask the rest of you the same question. Do you have an example of how your perspective changed during your overseas tour? And have you had the chance to integrate this new perspective into your subsequent roles? And Sandy, I'm going to start with you.
Well, subsequent roles, I'm still here, so I don't know.
True.
That remains to be seen. But soon enough. I think, I don't know if it's how my perspective has changed. One thing on a personal note, I am delighted to say that I have not had a car in 5 years, almost 6 years. And it's phenomenal. I love not sitting in my car. And I don't miss it, not a bit. But so that's one really important thing. But I think in terms of from a regulatory perspective, I think one thing that has caused me to question sometimes is, and it refers back to my previous comment, is how one of the reasons that we're revered as an agency is because we we have a lot to put at the work we do. We're very rich in resources to put it we do. And I'm really struck when I sit in meetings on a regular basis, technical meetings on product development or applications. And we have colleagues from Europe and other regions, and they may have, let me say product X, they may have 3 or 4 people participating in the call who know the subject in great depth. And FDA will have 30. Okay, we'll have 30, and I'm not exaggerating, who are all part of doing the same thing. And so it does make me wonder, my perspective has brought into question, how are we using our resources? Are we using them wisely? I can't say on product X whether, how many people it needs. That's not my point. It's simply there's so much, the contrast is just really gets your attention, and it does make me, has caused me to expand my thinking on what's possible for us. What we could do by rethinking the way we do some things. So that's one way that I think my perspective has shifted a little bit. And another way it is shifted is by looking at and grown great respect for how we engage in outreach activities. But it's in some ways, I think we do it extremely well. In other ways, and I'm comparing to Europe, for instance, I think there's a lot more we can do. In the European environment, for instance, I think the regulators are much more engaged with the medical practice community than we are at FDA. Partly it's historical, partly it's because of some of the way they're organized, but just in general, we're probably stronger on the patient engagement, but they're much stronger on the professional side. So I've learned a lot about that, and think that that's an area where we have lessons to share with each other, patients and professionals. I hope that gives you a flavor.
That does give me a flavor. And with regard to resources, knowing you, can imagine that you will integrate that into your subsequent role. Irene, what about you?
Thanks, Mark. I think, just going along with the broadening of the perspective, I think kind of the integration of the global perspective for me was also, moving from the very FDA focused point of view to a broader point of view. And I think I'll use trade as an example, just because I think sometimes it's viewed as kind of a dirty word in the FDA context, at least where I came from. But the recognition that everything that FDA does from a policy perspective, from a regulatory perspective, has global impact, and that necessarily impacts commerce, and that has concomitant repercussions for different markets and so forth. And just realizing that that's really all part of the same picture, and really just emphasizes the need for FDA, as it does in its focus, to have a strong scientific basis and rationale for any of the actions that we take. So I guess now in my new capacity in the industry, this becomes all the more relevant, because we're actually, the perspective is flipped. We're examining, Chinese policies and their impacts on MNC business, both operating outside and inside of China. And so having that kind of holistic viewpoint of like, how are you achieving your goal, and are you doing it in a fair manner, in a scientifically based manner, is really critical to the work that I'm doing now. So I appreciate having the experience I had before, and sort of shifting that perspective and how applicable that is, and so much of the work that myself and I think other people that have entered the industry have.
Irene. And Michael, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think living and working out of our Latin America office, which oversees 44 countries and territories in Latin America, Central America, and the Caribbean. I got a chance to travel and visit many of those countries. And I think the experience for me gave me insight into other regulatory perspectives and approaches. I came from ORA and a position within the Division of Field Investigations. And quite frankly, at least that mindset before I became enlightened was that, you know, if FDA didn't generate the information, it's not fit for use. And understanding that every foreign regulator has a program that assesses products coming into their country, products manufactured into their country, and products that are exported out of their country. And they have a regulatory structure, even though it's different than ours, that uses that information to generate numerators and denominators, products that are good from their perspective and oversight, and products that are bad from that perspective. And I think that the international experience allowed me to appreciate the work done by our foreign regulators and be able to take advantage of some of that regulatory information, especially when our foreign regulatory counterparts are making decisions about products that are unsafe and not fit for consumption in their own countries.
Thanks, Michael. I'd like to go back to Sandy and Sarah for a quick moment to ask them about their perspectives on reliance on the work of other regulators. Michael just shared his, and I'm sure that you both have ideas there as well. Sarah, over to you.
I was going to say Sandy gets to go first, but I'll take the first crack at this one. So I think one of the things that, you know, it's hard to recognize from the domestic side, but when you're in the foreign offices and you have the chance to engage globally, that the regulatory systems that are abroad have different levels of maturity. And so our ability to rely on their work also is commensurate with their maturity of the regulatory systems. Here in India, a lot of it is the regulatory systems aren't super transparent either. So a lot of the work that we've done over the years is really to understand the regulatory landscape, where there may be gaps in that regulatory landscape, building the relationships that we can leverage. You know, FDA is considered the gold standard, but it takes relationships to be able to say and advise on changing certain practices or improving or capacity building. And if you don't have those relationships, whatever you say is either not received or permanently damages the future relationship that you have established with those regulatory authorities. So, you know, here in India, I think, you know, obviously they would love for us to develop some reliance on their regulatory capacities. That's still some ways off. They like to bring up the MRA, and I say, you know, well, that took 20 years to develop. So it's not an overnight process to develop that sort of reliance and on each other's data. But first, it starts with transparency. And so until you understand what the other regulators are doing, there's no way to have any sort of assurance in what they're doing. So, you know, for us, a lot of that comes down to the relationships and you know, even talking to other colleagues here in India, that is something that culturally, there's a fear of criticism. So just in general, getting them to share meaningful information with us, even where we have MOUs or confidentiality commitments in place, has been very difficult. I gave the example that we've been relationship building with one agency for 3 years. And we have been sharing information in one direction for 3 years. And just this year, they finally shared something back with us that was a meaningful piece of information on the work that they had done. So while it's slow, it's also very valuable, because really we have no other way to have a lens into what some regulators do, because they're not forced to be transparent like FDA is. So, you know, just a little bit from a probably less mature regulatory environment, and then now back over to Sandy from a more mature regulatory standpoint.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, and you're right. You know, I'm in a situation in Europe where for the most part, we're dealing with very mature regulatory systems. And it's been such an interesting endeavor to share sharing information. I think we have a very long history of sharing information and intensely frank discussions on some areas, but much less so on others. And I think the really hard part for us has been on, for instance, the product quality and manufacturing inspections. And yet we're looking at the same, mostly the same facilities. You know, it's really quite interesting. And watching the interaction between our agencies has been fascinating because, and people are transparent, but one of the things you have to do when you're starting to have those conversations with other regulators is you've got to be able to articulate your rationale for why you do things a certain way. And that's often really tough because as an agency, you know, we're very insular. You know, we just talk to each other and, you know, we support each other and this is how we do it. And when you start to have to articulate to another regulator why we place so much value on a particular metric, for instance, and really support that among peers, it can sometimes be uncomfortable. And I mean, it goes in both directions, right? But watching that interaction is really key. And getting people to, you know, defend yourself. My gosh, you better be able to defend yourself to your peers because it's a lot easier than the public. So it's a heck of a lot easier. But I think the discussions that we have with our regulatory counterparts, at least in this environment, are incredibly enriching for all of us. And I have seen in both regions, I've seen people evolve in their thinking on certain things because of that information sharing. And I'm firmly convinced that that is a benefit to global public health when regulators can have these kinds of discussions, share information, be transparent, and really, you know, peel apart the layers and look at what are the scientific issues and how do they apply in you know, out in the public. It makes a big difference and it's more efficient. So where we can share and have that trust and understanding, it's incredibly valuable.
Thank you, Sarah and Sandy. So now I think we should turn to questions that were posed in the Q&A. And I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Nancy for the rest of our time.
Thanks, Mark. I had to find out how to turn my camera back on. Not that I haven't done enough of these. So one of the questions that we got early on was, what happened with the Africa office after, can you explain what, you know, what the plan is for future African offices and why it stopped, and maybe talk a little bit about Beverly?
So I can take that one on, I guess. So we had offices in South Africa and Jordan, and they were single-person offices. And frankly, the cost of having that office wasn't commensurate with the benefit that a single person could bring to the agency. And so upon reflection, we decided that we would develop our program at headquarters so that we could adequately engage with the Middle East and African countries, including South Africa. And we still have very, very close relations with the South African regulator and speak to them quite frequently. But that work we can do from headquarters and then conserve resources and put them into the other foreign offices which have greater scale and impact. With regard to future African offices, my office is currently in the process of doing an analysis of all of the offices to see whether, one, they're still in the right place, right? We started this 13 years ago and things change. And I think the analysis will show that they actually all are still in the right places. Two, whether or not we've got the right ratio of staff. The foreign offices, as you know, have a director and a deputy, and they have policy analysts, and some of them have consumer safety officers, investigators, and we want to make sure that we have the correct mix there. And then three, where else we might need foreign offices and where they could have the most impact in helping protect and promote the public health here at home.
That's very helpful. One of the other questions that's come up in the Q&A And if you guys have any more questions, put them in there. How much, and I'd love just Irene, Sarah, Michael, Sandy, you not as much because it's probably done a lot in English, but what is the requirements for your language ability in order to partake in the foreign offices? How about Irene, can you go first maybe?
Sure. My experience was actually, there was not a specific requirement for being able to speak the language, Chinese, to be posted there. There's actually, we have a lot of great support. And I was going to give a shout out for our locally engaged staff who are really integral to the success of the offices. And as I understand, can be part of the network. So, with their support, we're able to engage quite successfully with our counterparts and others who don't speak English. But I will say that, we were offered support both before and during our tours through the post-language program. And that was really great, I think, for a number of us to gain facility in our daily lives and just be able to get more out of the experience. I was fortunate to have a little bit of background in Chinese myself before going. And I think it did develop quite a bit while I was at Post. And towards the end of my tour, I was able to have, kind of side conversations with government officials. And that was very, very useful, I will say. But it's not necessarily a requirement of the position, at least during the time I was there.
Great. How about you, Sarah? I think India is tough.
Yeah, so in India, actually, surprisingly, English is mostly the common language throughout the country. There are dozens and dozens of dialects within India. Hindi in the north, you have Telugu, Carnatic, all sorts of dialects in the south, Gujarati. We're very lucky in our locally engaged staff as well that a lot of them speak other dialects in addition to English. The post-language program is great. It's helpful for even if you just want some day-to-day Hindi to be able to, get directions from the Uber driver or, figure out what fruit you're fixing to eat. Some of those are helpful things that you can pick up from the post-language program. But virtually all engagements are done in English. It's very rare that translations are needed. In fact, there's one of the big things that the US government does in India is related to student visas. So there's a huge amount of people that do their education in the US and in other Western countries, and then they come back to India. So, if you're doing an inspection, all of the management will speak English. You're just looking at the operators that might not speak English. All of our government to government interactions are predominantly in English. It's very rare that we would get an engagement where English wouldn't be the predominant way of engaging, but it is helpful. Our LES also, if you ask them to teach you a few words, they're always happy to do so. So you can learn a few words and get by. It's always appreciated, but it's not required here.
How about you, Mike? Did you take advantage of the post language program too?
Yeah, I did. And I would say it is extremely important in Latin America. While we did rely, like Irene said, heavily on our locally engaged staff, when you are the regional director and you have an opportunity to meet with heads of state and senior officials in other governments, it is important to have the ability to communicate in Spanish, because many of those individuals don't have a command of the English language. So yeah, I took advantage of language training before reporting overseas. I took advantage of opportunities within the embassy. I worked hard at that language to arrive at a level where I could participate in meetings and open conferences and essentially communicate with my international partners. It was a skill that my family became proficient at. My oldest son actually minored in Spanish in college, and both of us actually continue to take Spanish courses to this day because we didn't want our language skills to decline after coming back to the United States. So it's a skill that we're going to carry with us forward for the rest of our lives. But it is extremely important but rewarding when you arrive at a point where you can communicate and share your experiences and share the purpose of FDA and our mission, as well as interact just socially. Out in Costa Rica, once you're outside of the city, it's only Spanish. So you have to be able to speak the language to survive and get around.
Muy bien, perfecto. Gracias. Hey, Sandy, do you want to share something?
Yeah, I do. When of course, I've been in 2 places in one tour, and in the first one, it was the language of the European Medicines Agency where I'm posted is English. So all of their work is in English, but it remains a multilingual environment. And in order to even get a job there, one has to speak at least 2 languages, and to get promoted, you need a third. And one of the things but when I came to the Netherlands, it really gave me yet additional perspective. While most people in the Netherlands speak English, and they speak it extraordinarily well. I mean, almost without an accent. It's that combination with working with colleagues who are from other cultures has really driven home to me the value of being able to communicate, or at least attempt to communicate on diplomatic level with people in their native language. The sign of it is really considered is a sign of respect. And I think as Americans, it's not something that we experience. We just assume everyone speaks English because that's all we speak. And it has really been remarkable, and I've been fortunate enough to become friends with people from other countries, and they will always speak with me in English, but they will say, and in moments of candor, the fact that others make an effort really is really important. It goes a long way, and that's not something, I was always embarrassed to try because I feel like a clod. Dutch is not an easy thing to pronounce. I've learned new ways of moving my palate. But I do give it the go, and boy, it makes a difference. And so if it makes a difference in commonality, and then you start to watch for that in other regions, it matters. It's been quite interesting to me, something I hadn't appreciated before. So I did use post language. I wish, though, that I had an opportunity to start earlier, because I'm not a natural person naturally inclined to other languages. I didn't learn them as a young kid. And this one's particularly challenging, but I've found it valuable, and I can sort of get by.
That's
I'm
awesome.
the Dutch speaker in the house. My husband is like, giving up.
So just a really short question. How long is a typical tour? Mark, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So I think there really is no such thing as a typical tour, and I think our panelists might agree with that. But when one applies for an overseas position, they have the opportunity to determine whether they'd like to be there for 2 years or 3 years, and they can extend those tours up to 6 years. And there is a cumulative cap on the number of years one can spend in a particular country. HHS, the department, mandates that cap. So it can be anywhere from 2 years up to 6.
Okay, great. So I have about 3 or 4 more questions. So we'll do a little bit of a lightning round because we only have 5 more minutes. But can you talk about whether FDA is undertaking efforts to establish a pipeline of international office staff? And what do you think the best preparation for future service in the foreign offices? What's the best preparation for that? Mark, do you want to grab that quick too?
Sure. We're always trying to improve our recruitment and retention for the foreign offices. We have currently continuous open postings for CSOs in China and India. And we are trying to find new ways to get the word out about the foreign offices. Believe it or not, there are parts of FDA that don't realize we have any offices overseas, and really letting people know about the offices and hearing experiences like the ones today are our best recruiting tool.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. So there's another question here is, Are FDA Foreign Office staff similar to State Department SFOs? One question is that whether they're able to bring a spouse and family.
Yes, they are considered diplomats. They travel on Black passports. They also can bring family members as well, and most of them do. The difference between them and an FSO is that FSOs, rotate from post to post, and sometimes that happens with our FDA overseas staff, but sometimes it does not. Most times it does not.
Gotcha. So so we only have about 3 more minutes. So, and one question is very broad about how did the pandemic affect your work and the opportunities available? So maybe if we could do a real quick answer on that. And then I'm going to drop in the chat another question about how FDA interacts with PDMA in Japan and TGA in Australia. So maybe Irene, if that's your area of expertise, I'll drop that in the chat and somebody could answer that, that'd be great. But let's talk about the pandemic really quickly. How's that affected your work and the opportunities available? Sandy.
Well, it's been full on. So, more than enough work to do, that's for sure. And I think it's one of the things that probably what's been most striking to me is that the investment that FDA has made and in Europe has really borne fruit in us being able to address the pandemic collectively as regulators around the world. Those relationships that we have built over the past decade have more than come to fruition in making it much easier to share information, to understand each other's decisions, and really probe options. So it's on the personal front, we can't go anywhere, but that we're all in that boat. Or you can't go anywhere with ease, that's for sure. But work-wise, it's been exhausting but fascinating, and I think really for me, it really gets me up in the morning. There's a lot to do, and it's a lot worth doing.
How about you, Sarah? Do you want to give a quick answer?
Yeah, I was going to say that our work during the pandemic was some of the most compelling of my career. Just here in India, when we had the devastating second wave, we were able to lead an interagency team that oversaw the specifications for USG aid that was coming into to India. And just, the shivers you got up your spine when you saw 120,000 vials of remdesivir come off of a plane coming into India, knowing that it was going to help people in need. And even just the work that we've done to ensure the flow of critical medical goods back to the US during the pandemic. Really, I've never worked so many long days in my life, but very compelling work. And really, the pandemic has really just further demonstrated the role that FDA can play, not only in the US public health space, but the global public health space.
That's fantastic. I have to say, I have learned so much today. I think, Lee, you get a round of applause on this, because this to me is just to really understand what's going on in the international offices, and the experience has really been valuable. So thank you all, the panelists, for participating in this. Just to wrap up, because it is 9 o'clock now, I did put up a little end of the year poll. I hopefully not in the middle of the screen like it is on mine, but this is my first Zoom webinar, so I'm learning. But just to close this, thank you all. This was fantastic. And I really do hope that if people are interested in connecting, that you'll consider joining the FDA Alumni Association, which then allows you to join this Foreign Office Alumni Network. And Lee and others the international team are going to be working on programming moving forward. And I think it's going to be as exciting as the people who join it make it. We're really willing to support this effort. And I think there's so much to share, from the little things of, how do you access this post-language program, to can I bring my family, and which are the good schools, and all, which fruit am I eating? So I just think there's a really great potential here. And so I do hope you'll all join. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Lee Verbois or myself, and we'd be happy to give you more information. There's also information on our website, and I dropped some of that information into the chat. So with that, thank you all for participating. Mark, do you have any final words?
Just thanks to all our participants and the Alumni Association for organizing this, and really kudos to Lee. Without you, we wouldn't be here, and we all owe you a great amount of thanks for getting this together.
Thank you very much. Stay tuned. There'll be more information on next steps in the future. Thank you.